Man, I'm glad this came across my stories. I respect your points of view and willingness to broaden your thinking on this topic. Why not on politics? I try to be broad on all my topics, my engagements, whatever. Don't mistake me being narrow-minded for you and I disagreeing. But let's jump into a political hotbed. Nothing I'm about to say is inconsistent with anything I've said. Did you notice how a week before COVID, every left-winger was saying you have to go eat in a Chinese restaurant because the idea that it came from China is anti-Chinese. So every left-winger was saying go out and eat like as much Chinese food as you possibly can, which is usually in the densest parts of your urban settings. Then a week later, every left-winger was like, you better stay home with one person or less or else you're killing all of us. And no one ever really addressed the fact that they said the exact opposite, go out and eat as much as possible in the densest areas of your city as possible. Then the concept of a lab leak was summarily dismissed. Now, while it hasn't been found to be conclusive, you'd be insane to not look at the lab in Wuhan and go, there's a possibility that that did happen. Now, we do know that the majority, but not like climate science, where there's like an 11,000 scientist consensus with the only dissenters being paid for by oil, fact. It's a lot less like, the numbers are a little different when it comes to lab leak. Like, yeah, it probably came from like rural setting, bat, and then that wet market is probably, but it's inconclusive as of 2023. So the possibility that we should not have been eating all that Chinese food and that it wasn't anti-Chinese hate and that we basically then pivoted within one day as a society or else you were a bad person and then you were a conspiracy theorist if you said lab leak. But now we know that it's actually, it's less than 50% according to consensus, but it's possible. So there you go, broad enough for you. However, more importantly to that, or equally importantly, is the fact there's an insane amount of anti-Chinese hate. Is the fact that you have leaders refusing to call this by its actual name and calling it the Wuhan flu to stoke otherism. Both things can be true. You can be a reasonable, broad-minded human looking and going, you'd be insane to discount the possibility that a lab looking at these viruses let something out. I would suggest totally non-deliberately. You'd be insane to not allow that as a possibility. You'd also be insane not to look at Donald Trump and go, that guy is stoking fires through bigotry that then let him basically be otherphobic and then also ironically let them go. So once we don't let them in, we can do whatever we want over here. And he had a dreadful COVID response. All those things can be true. Broad enough for you? I'm not trying to attack you. You sent me a very nice message here. But if you look at my videos, I think it's a lot wider swath of potentials than you think. I've just never seen evidence against Hillary. People will tell me that Justin Trudeau's not a feminist because of the rabel dismissing her. That has nothing to do with his feminism or not. So now it's like, you asked me to do a video on this. I'm not saying you, but that's just, you're linking things that have nothing to do with anything. If you look at the bulk of the comments on my page, the bulk of them that come from people who would disagree with me, the bulk are not reasonable comments. And while the people who agree with me can sometimes be like, you're stupid, to people in my comments, and add that tag that maybe is unnecessary, the reason they feel that way tends to have reason behind it. So remember, I'm not really about landing on an idea. I'm about the functioning mechanism by which the idea is arrived at. Dismiss, dismiss, dismiss. Well, if you dismiss lab leak theory, you're choosing a narrative instead of describing a narrative based on the available information. Let's take vaccines. Vaccines work. They just don't work with the immediate one-to-one efficacy that everybody wants and that is reasonable within any vaccine, like a flu shot, etc., and doesn't work that way. But for the deniers, if it doesn't work the way they've decided it should work, they dismiss it. So that type of thinking is also insane. So I go, yeah, I've never seen any reasonable vax denier position. By the way, I don't care if you get the vaccine or not. There's another one. Is that broad politically? Where does that live for you? I just care that you dismiss it based on crap or discredited scientists. And I'm not sure why white supremacists kept showing up at the anti-vax rallies early on. You're like, what's that weird overlap? You know, like, these are just fun things to point out and go, they're not, the white supremacists aren't showing up at Pride to support Pride, but they are showing up at the anti-vax rally. Not entirely. Anybody who says Trudeau called me racist, no, he didn't. He called racists. So I'm jumping into a lot of pots here, but it's all based on a mechanism, not a conclusion. What do you think? What do you think of all this in my new basement?